The transport shuttle descended through layers of golden clouds that wrapped around throne world vermilion like silk. Dacian pressed his face against the window, watching the Imperial Palace grow larger below. The massive structure stretched across an entire continent, its towers reaching toward the 3 moons that hung in the purple sky. "Stop gawking like a tourist," he once said from the seat beside him. She was reviewing data on her tablet, her fingers moving quickly across the screen. "We need to focus. They don't summon archaeologists to the Imperial Palace for casual visits." Dacian pulled away from the window and checked his own notes for the 100th time. 3 weeks ago, they had published a paper about strange texts found in a ruined temple on the Bianjing world of Kalesh 9. The text mentioned something called the ancestral tongue-bearers and contained linguistic patterns that shouldn't exist. Patterns that looked almost like ancient Earth languages mixed with alien scripts nobody could read. The shuttle landed on a platform made of black stone that seemed to absorb light. Guards in crimson armor waited for them, tall reptilian scarans with eyes that tracked every movement. One of them stepped forward. "Dr. Dacian and Dr. Haiwan, you will follow us. Lord Vethrak is waiting." They walked through corridors so vast that their footsteps echoed for seconds. The walls were covered in holographic displays showing the Empire's territories, thousands of star systems connected by glowing lines. Dacian had studied Imperial history his whole life, but being inside the palace made all those years of research feel small and distant. Lord Vethrak waited in a chamber that smelled of incense and something metallic. He was massive, even for a Scaran, with scales that shifted from deep green to black depending on how the light hit them. His eyes were golden and cold. "Humans," he said, his voice like grinding stones. "You have published research about the ancestral tongue-bearers. Explain what you have found." Haiwan activated a holographic display from her tablet. Ancient texts appeared in the air, rotating slowly.
"We discovered these in multiple locations across the Outer Rim."
The writing system combines elements from at least 7 different language families. But there's something unusual. Some of the grammatical structures match languages from Earth, specifically ancient Korean dialects from over 8,000 years ago. Lord Vethrak's scales rippled, a sign of agitation. Impossible. Humans had not left their homeworld 8,000 years ago. Your species only achieved interstellar travel 300 years ago. That's what the official records say, Dacian agreed. But these texts exist. We've carbon dated the materials. They're authentic. Either someone brought Earth languages to the stars thousands of years before human space travel, or humans were already out here much earlier than anyone knows. "Show me," Lord Vethrak commanded. Haiwan expanded one section of text. The symbols glowed blue against the darkness. This particular passage uses a ceremonial form of address. The structure is identical to how ancient Korean royalty would have spoken to their subjects. We found similar patterns in Hangul script, the writing system developed in Korea in the 15th century, but the texts we found predate that by thousands of years. Lord Vethrak was silent for a long moment. Then he stood, his height forcing Dacian and Haiwan to look up. "Come with me. There is something you must see." They followed him deeper into the palace, past checkpoints that required genetic scanning and neural verification. The guards they passed looked nervous, which made Dacian's stomach tighten. If Imperial guards were nervous, something was very wrong. They entered an elevator that dropped for what felt like hours. When the doors finally opened, they stood before a massive circular door set into a wall of black crystal. The door was covered in glowing symbols that pulsed with soft light, like a heartbeat made visible. "This is the Emperor's seal chamber," Lord Vethrak said. 300 years ago, the last emperor died without naming an heir. Since then, nobody has been able to open this door. According to ancient law, only those of imperial blood can unlock the seal. The royal bloodline is extinct, or so we believed. Ambassador Kyung-mi stepped out of the shadows. Dacian hadn't noticed her before. She was human, middle-aged with gray streaking her black hair. She looked tired. "The Empire is falling apart," she said quietly. "Without access to the seal chamber, the ruling council cannot access the master defense codes or the ancient archives. Rival factions are gathering their fleets. Some believe the chamber should be destroyed. Others want to force it open. Either option could trigger civil war. What does this have to do with us?" Haiwan asked. Lord Vethrak gestured toward the sealed door. "For 3 centuries, we have tried everything. The seal responds to genetic signatures, but nobody alive carries the right markers. Then your research appeared. Texts suggesting the Imperial founders had contact with your species long before recorded history. You think humans might be related to the Imperial bloodline? Dacian felt his mouth go dry. I think we are desperate, Lord Vethrak said. And you will approach the seal. It wasn't a request. Dacian looked at HFY, who nodded slightly. They walked together toward the massive door. As they got closer, the symbols began to pulse faster. The light grew brighter. It's responding, someone whispered behind them. Dacian stopped an arm's length from the door. The symbols were moving now, rearranging themselves across the surface. His heart pounded so hard he could feel it in his throat. Slowly, carefully, he reached out one hand. The moment his fingers touched the door, light exploded across its surface. Everyone in the chamber gasped or stepped back. The symbols blazed bright enough to cast sharp shadows, and then they began to change. The alien scripts melted away, replaced by characters Dacian recognized instantly. Hangul. Ancient, formal, ceremonial Hangul. The symbols formed a single question that hung in the air like a challenge or a prayer. 고향의 이름이 무엇이냐? HFY's translation device chirped and went silent. Its database didn't have these exact characters in this configuration. But Dacian didn't need a translator. He had learned these characters from his grandmother when he was young, though in a slightly different form. What is the name of home? He whispered. The chamber erupted in chaos. Lord Vethrak was shouting orders. Ambassador Kyungmi was speaking rapidly into a communicator. Guards moved into defensive positions. But Dacian barely heard any of it. He stared at the question written in his ancestral language, blazing on an alien door that was older than human civilization was supposed to be. HFY grabbed his arm. Dacian, do you understand what this means? He nodded slowly. The Imperial founders spoke Korean, or something like it. They knew Earth, they knew humans, but that's impossible. The timeline doesn't work. Unless the timeline is wrong, HFY said. Unless humans were out here thousands of years ago. Unless we're not newcomers to the galaxy at all. Lord Vethrak approached, his scales dark with anger or fear. Can you open it? I don't know, Dacian admitted. It's asking a question. I think it wants an answer, not just blood. Then answer it. I don't know how. The question is simple, but the answer isn't. What is the name of home? Earth, Korea? The place where I was born? The place where my ancestors came from? Which home does it mean? The symbols pulsed again as if waiting, as if the door itself was patient, willing to wait another 300 years or 3,000 for someone who could understand what it was really asking. Ambassador Kyungmi stepped forward. Her face was pale but determined. I need to contact Earth immediately. If there's even a chance that humans are connected to the Imperial bloodline, we need to investigate. Family records, genetic databases, everything. Do it, Lord Vethrak said. But quickly. News of this will spread. When the Empire learns that the seal responded to a human, there will be chaos. He turned to Dacian and HFY. You will remain here under Imperial protection. You may have just started a war. Dacian looked back at the door, at the question glowing in his grandmother's language, and wondered what his answer would be. Wondered what answer would unlock secrets that had been sealed away for longer than his entire civilization had existed. The seal answered only to blood, but it was asking for something more. The news spread through the Empire faster than light itself. Within hours, every major news network was broadcasting the same impossible story. The Emperor's seal had responded to a human. The ancient door that had remained silent for 3 centuries had spoken in a language from Earth. Dacian sat in a luxury apartment deep within the palace, watching the chaos unfold on dozens of screens. Riots had broken out on 3 colony worlds. Human settlements were being evacuated under armed guard. The Galactic Assembly had called an emergency session. Everyone wanted answers that nobody had. Turn it off, HFY said from the doorway. She looked like she hadn't slept. Watching won't help. They're saying humans might have infiltrated the Empire from the beginning. That we've been planning this for thousands of years. Some are calling us genetic thieves. Some are also calling you the rightful heir to the throne, HFY pointed out. The conspiracy theories are going in every direction. The truth is simpler and stranger. We just don't know what it is yet. A knock at the door made them both jump. 2 guards entered, followed by a man Dacian recognized from academic conferences. Director Tae-hyun, the head of the Galactic Historical Preservation Society, looked like he had aged 10 years in the past day. We need to talk, Tae-hyun said. Privately, the guards left. Tae-hyun activated a privacy field that made the air shimmer around them. I brought someone who should have been consulted yesterday, but certain people wanted to keep this quiet. A woman entered the room. She was human, young, with the tired eyes of someone who had seen too many lab results that made no sense. She carried a secure data case. "This is Dr. Ji-woo," Tae-hyun said. "She's a geneticist specializing in xenobiology. For the past 15 years, she's been running a classified project studying human genetic diversity across the colonies." Ji-woo set the data case on the table and opened it. Holographic displays filled the air, showing complex genetic sequences and family trees that branched across centuries. 20 years ago, we started finding anomalies in certain human populations, small genetic markers that didn't match any known Earth lineages. At first, we thought it was contamination or errors in sequencing, but the patterns were too consistent. She pulled up a specific sequence and highlighted several sections. These markers appear in approximately 1 in every 50,000 humans. They're concentrated in specific family lines, mostly from East Asia, particularly the Korean Peninsula and surrounding regions. We kept it quiet because we didn't understand what it meant. Daishin felt cold. "You're saying some humans have alien DNA?" "Not exactly alien," Tae-hyun said. 2 days ago, after the seal responded to you, Lord Vethrak gave us access to the Imperial archives. We were allowed to compare our genetic data with samples from the Imperial crypt. Ji-woo pulled up another display. 2 genetic sequences appeared side by side. They were nearly identical. The markers we found in human populations matched genetic sequences from the Imperial bloodline. Not perfectly, but close enough that there's no question. Somehow, thousands of years ago, human DNA mixed with Imperial DNA. The room seemed to tilt. Hae-won grabbed the back of a chair to steady herself. Daishin couldn't speak. "There's more," Tae-hyun said grimly. "We need to see the Imperial archives ourselves. There's information Lord Vethrak hasn't shared." An hour later, they stood in a chamber filled with data crystals that stretched up into darkness. Each crystal contained millions of documents, histories, genetic records, and secrets from 10,000 years of Imperial rule. High Curator Morthax waited for them, his mantis-like body perfectly still except for his head, which tracked their movements with insectoid precision. "The Regent Protector has authorized limited access," Morthax said, his voice like wind through dead leaves. "I am required to show you what you seek, though I must warn you that some truths carry heavy burdens. We need to know the truth about the Imperial bloodline's origins," Tae-hyun said. Morthax's compound eyes reflected the light from 1,000 data crystals. "Then you will learn what only the highest levels of Imperial administration have known. Come." He led them to a sealed section where the oldest records were kept. With movements that looked like ritual, Morthax activated a crystal that was darker than the others. Information flooded the holographic displays. 10,000 years ago, Morthax began, the galaxy was in chaos. The species wars had been raging for 1,000 years before that. Every advanced civilization was fighting for dominance or survival. Billions died. Entire species went extinct. Something had to change. The displays showed images of devastation, burning worlds and shattered fleets, refugee ships fleeing through the darkness. A coalition of 12 species decided to end the wars through unity. They would create an empire, but not one ruled by conquest. They would engineer a ruling bloodline that combined genetic material from all 12 species, a dynasty that belonged to everyone and no one. Hae-won leaned forward. Hybrid genetics on that scale should be impossible. The biological incompatibilities alone would be. They used technology we no longer understand, Morthax interrupted. Ancient genetic manipulation far beyond current capabilities. They succeeded in creating the first emperor. But there was a problem. New images appeared. These showed a planet that looked almost like Earth but wasn't quite right. The continents were similar but different. One of the 12 founding species refused to be identified. Their representatives wore masks at all meetings. They contributed genetic material but would not reveal their homeworld or their history. The other 11 species agreed to this condition because this mysterious species contributed something crucial. They provided genetic sequences that allowed all the other incompatible DNA to merge successfully. Daishin's hands were shaking. That species was human. We believe so, Morthax confirmed. The records are deliberately vague, but linguistic analysis of the founding documents shows traces of Earth languages mixed with the official Imperial script. And there are references to the people from the Blue World, who spoke in circles and squares. Hangul, Hyewan breathed. The Korean writing system combined circles and squares, but it was developed only 600 years ago on Earth. This was 10,000 years ago out here. Perhaps it was developed on Earth 600 years ago because the knowledge already existed somewhere in human genetic memory, Taehyun suggested. Perhaps humans in space and humans on Earth are the same species that split long before recorded history. Morthax continued his story. 8,000 years ago, during the Third Imperial Succession Crisis, a faction of the royal family lost a civil war. Rather than be executed, they were exiled. They took ships and disappeared into uncharted space. The records say they were the last to carry the genetic lineage of the Blue World people. Jiwoo pulled up her genetic data again. 8,000 years ago matches the time frame of the genetic anomalies. If the exiled royals made their way to Earth, if they hid among the human populations there, and slowly interbred over thousands of years, their genetic markers would look exactly like what I've been finding. You need to test him, Hwan said, pointing at Daishin. Right now. We need to know if he carries these markers. Jiwoo had brought a portable genetic scanner. She took a blood sample from Daishin's finger, and they all waited in silence while the device processed. The seconds stretched into minutes. Finally, the results appeared. Jiwoo stared at the display. Her face went pale. Positive. Strong positive. Daishin, you carry dormant imperial genetic markers at a concentration I've never seen. You're not just distantly related to the imperial bloodline. You're a direct descendant. The words hung in the air like an executioner's blade. That's impossible, Daishin whispered. I'm an archaeologist. My family comes from a small village on Earth. We're farmers. We're nobody. Your family comes from Korea, Taehyun said quietly. The same region where the genetic markers are most concentrated. Your family probably maintained traditions and married within their community for thousands of years, preserving the bloodline without knowing what they were preserving. An alarm suddenly blared through the archives. Morthax's head snapped up. Security breach. Someone is trying to access this chamber. The doors exploded inward. Armed soldiers in unmarked armor poured through, their weapons raised. Behind them came a tall figure in ceremonial robes, his face hidden behind a mask that looked like a screaming skull. Abomination, the figure declared. The seal must not be opened by human corruption. Kill them all. Guards loyal to Lord Vethrak appeared from side entrances, and the archive chamber became a battlefield. Energy weapons turned data crystals to molten glass. Morthax rushed them toward an emergency exit, his long limbs moving with surprising speed. Go! Taehyun shouted. Get to the ships. Get off this world. They'll kill you if you stay. They ran through corridors that shook with explosions. Ambassador Kyungmi found them at a hangar where a small ship was being prepared for launch. I called in favors. This ship will get you to New Seoul Colony. You'll be safe there while we figure out what to do. What about you? Hwan asked. I'm staying to manage the diplomatic crisis. Kyungmi looked at Daishin. You might be the only thing preventing a galactic civil war, or you might start one. Either way, you need to survive. As their ship launched into the purple sky, Daishin watched Throne World Vermilion shrink behind them. Somewhere down there, the seal waited with its unanswered question. What is the name of home? He still didn't know. But now he understood why the question mattered. The seal didn't just want someone with the right blood. It wanted someone who remembered where they came from. Someone who carried the weight of history in their bones. The ship jumped to faster-than-light travel, and the stars stretched into lines of light. The merchant ship Homeward Star dropped out of faster-than-light travel near the edge of New Seoul's star system. Captain Sung Ho, a man with gray in his beard and scars on his hands, guided his ship past the orbital defense platforms with practiced ease. Welcome to New Seoul, he said to his passengers, the only colony world where you can still get real kimchi and real trouble in equal measure. Through the viewports, Daishin watched the planet grow larger. It looked more like Earth than any world he had visited. Blue oceans, green continents, and white clouds. The lights of cities sparkled on the night side. How did you get assigned to extract us? Hwan asked Sung Ho. I wasn't assigned. I volunteered. My grandmother's grandmother came from the same village as Daishin's family on Earth. When Ambassador Kyungmi put out a quiet call for a trustworthy ship, my name came up. He glanced back at them. Besides, the whole empire knows who you are now. If you're really imperial blood, half the galaxy wants to protect you and the other half wants you dead. I'd rather be on the protecting side. They landed at a private spaceport away from the main city. Waiting for them was a woman in traditional Korean hanbok, the flowing dress adapted with modern materials that shimmered like silk and armor combined. She bowed formally. "I am Bora, cultural historian of New Seoul. You are safe here, Daishin. Our colony has maintained Korean traditions for 200 years. Whatever you need to understand about your heritage, we can help." They drove through countryside that could have been transplanted from Earth. Rice fields stretched between low hills. Traditional-style houses with curved roofs sat beside modern buildings. Children played in schoolyards, their laughter carrying on the wind. New Seoul was founded by families who wanted to preserve Korean culture, Bora explained as they drove. Not as a museum, but as a living tradition. We adapt and grow, but we remember where we come from. When news reached us about the seal responding to Korean writing, we knew you would need us. The safe house was a traditional compound surrounded by gardens. Inside, the rooms were simple but comfortable. Daishin sat on the floor while Bora served tea in cups older than interstellar travel. "The seal asked you a question," Bora said. "고향의 이름이 무엇이냐? What is the name of home?" You cannot answer because you don't understand what the question means. "I know what home means," Daishin protested. "Do you?" In Korean, we have many words for home. Jib means house, the physical building. Gajong means household, the family unit. Goyang means hometown, the place you're from. Jogug means homeland, your nation. But the question uses Goyang specifically. Your hometown, your origin. The place that made you who you are. Hee-won pulled up the seal's interface on her tablet. "I've been analyzing the linguistic structure. The question isn't just asking for a name. The grammar suggests it wants understanding. It's asking you to prove you know what home means to you personally. How do I prove that to a door?" "Maybe you don't," Bora said quietly. "Maybe the seal has been waiting for someone who carries both the blood and the memory. The Imperial founders who contributed human DNA, they didn't want their secrets opened by just anyone with the right genes. They wanted someone who remembered. Someone who maintained connection to their origins despite thousands of years of separation." A chime interrupted them. Ji-woo's face appeared on a holographic display. She looked frightened. "You need to see this. All of you. It's everywhere." She transferred footage from multiple news sources. Daishin's stomach dropped as he watched. Fleets were mobilizing across the Empire. The faction that had attacked them in the archives had revealed themselves as the Purists, a group that believed the Empire should remain sealed and leaderless forever, rather than allow contaminated bloodlines to claim power. More worrying were the reports from human colonies. Angry mobs were attacking anyone suspected of having ties to the Imperial bloodline. 3 research stations had been destroyed. 12 people were dead. "They're saying humans have been lying for centuries," Ji-woo explained. "That we've been hiding our connection to the Empire, waiting for the right moment to seize control. The purist leader, Inquisitor Threxall, is calling for all humans to be expelled from the Empire or worse." "That's insane," Hye-won said. "We didn't even know about the connection until 3 days ago." "Fear doesn't care about truth," Bora replied. She turned to Daishin. "The Empire is tearing itself apart. Lord Vethrak's coalition is barely holding the capital. If you can't open the seal soon, there will be civil war." Sung-ho appeared in the doorway. "We have a bigger problem. I just picked up fleet movements. Threxall's forces are heading this way. They know you're on New Seoul. How long do we have?" Daishin asked. "Maybe 6 hours. Maybe less," Bora stood. "Then we must work quickly. Daishin, you need to understand what home means. Not the word, but the feeling. The memory. Come with me." She led him through the compound to a library filled with old books and data crystals. These are the cultural archives of New Seoul, records of families, traditions, stories, and memories brought from Earth 200 years ago. "Your answers are here. I don't have time to read thousands of documents you don't need to read. You need to remember." Bora activated several displays. Images filled the air. Photographs of Korean villages from centuries ago, videos of traditional ceremonies, recordings of songs and poems. Your family maintained their culture on Earth for 8,000 years without knowing why. That continuity matters. That memory is what the seal recognizes. Daishin watched as scenes from Korea's history played out before him. He saw images from the village where his grandmother had grown up. The mountain paths she had walked. The rivers where she had played as a child. She had told him stories about those places when he was young, teaching him the old songs and poems even though they lived on a space station far from Earth. Why did she teach me these things? He asked quietly. Why did it matter to her that I learned poems in Korean about mountains I would never see? Because memory is how we survive, Bora said. Your grandmother's grandmother's grandmother, going back hundreds of generations, they all carried these memories. They didn't know they were carrying imperial genes, but they knew something was important. They knew these stories and songs and traditions mattered. They kept them alive. Hyewon joined them, her tablet glowing with new analysis. I think I understand what the seal is doing. It's not just a lock. It's a test of cultural continuity. The imperial founders created it to ensure that only descendants who maintained their identity across thousands of years could access what's inside. They wanted proof that their culture survived. But the imperial culture is gone, Dacian said. The empire changed so much over 10,000 years. The founders wouldn't recognize it. Exactly. The empire forgot its roots. It became so focused on unity that it erased the individual cultures that created it. But some humans in one small corner of one planet kept their traditions alive. Your family, my family, all the families represented in this archive. Bora gestured at the displays. We are what the seal has been waiting for. An alarm blared outside. Sung-ho rushed in. They're here. 3 battleships just entered orbit. They're demanding we surrender you, or they'll start bombing cities. Lord Vethrak's face appeared on the emergency channel. His scales were dark with stress. Dacian, can you hear me? Threxel has declared you a false heir and an enemy of the Empire. His fleet surrounds New Seoul. My ships are moving to intercept, but we're outnumbered. If you can open the seal, do it now. It's the only thing that might stop this war. I'm on New Seoul, not Throne World Vermilion, Dacian protested. The seal is 3 star systems away. Then get back here. I'm sending my fastest ships to escort you through the blockade. But Dacian, you need to understand what answer the seal wants. When you stand before it again, you might only have one chance. The connection cut off. Warning sirens wailed across New Seoul as the colony's defense forces scrambled. Through the windows, Dacian could see lights in the sky as ships took positions for battle. Hyewon grabbed his arm. We need to go now. But Dacian didn't move. He stared at the images Bora had shown him. The villages and mountains, the traditions and memories. His grandmother's face, teaching him songs in a language that had somehow traveled from Earth to the stars and back again, across thousands of years. I think I know, he whispered. I think I know what the answer is. Then let's hope you're right, Sung-ho said. Because half the Empire is waiting to kill you, and the other half is waiting to crown you. Either way, everything changes when you open that seal. They ran for the homeward star as the first explosions lit up the sky. Threxel's forces were firing on the orbital platforms, demanding surrender. Lord Vethrak's fleet dropped out of faster-than-light travel on the other side of the planet, and space filled with warships facing each other across New Seoul's blue sky. As Sung-ho's ship launched toward the battle, Dacian looked back at the planet below. He thought about Bora's archives, about his grandmother's songs, about 8,000 years of memory carried in the genes and stories of families who never forgot where they came from. The seal had asked him for the name of home. He finally understood that it wasn't asking for a word. It was asking for a memory, for proof that he carried the weight of history in his blood and in his heart. The Empire had forgotten where it came from, but he remembered. Now he just had to survive long enough to prove it. The homeward star shook as energy weapons flashed past its hull. Sung-ho threw the ship into a spiral, dodging fire from 3 directions at once. Behind them, New Seoul burned in spots where orbital strikes had broken through the shields. This is going to be close, Sung-ho shouted over the roar of overloaded engines. Hold on to something. Dacian strapped himself into a seat while Hyewon secured their research equipment. Through the viewport, he could see the battle spreading. Dozens of ships exchanged fire, while New Seoul's defenders tried to protect the planet below. In the distance, a massive vessel appeared, its hull painted with Lord Vethrak's colors. That's the Stone Throne, Sung-ho said, Vethrak's flagship. If we can reach it, we might survive this. A wing of fighters broke formation and moved to intercept them. Sung-ho cursed and pushed the engines harder. They're trying to cut us off. Then go around, Hyewon suggested. There is no around. We're in the middle of a battle. One of the fighters fired. The shot grazed the homeward star's shields, sending sparks through the cabin. Alarms screamed. But before the fighters could fire again, larger ships moved between them and Sung-ho's vessel. Ships marked with Earth's insignia and the flags of human colonies. This is Admiral Insu of the Human Defense Fleet, A voice boomed over the radio. No one touches that ship. All human vessels form protective formation around the homeward star. Get Dacian to safety. Tears blurred Dacian's vision. He had never met Admiral Insu, but the entire human fleet had come to protect him. Ships from Earth, Mars, the outer colonies, all of them risking everything because he might be the key to stopping a war. The homeward star slipped through the battle and docked with the stone throne. Lord Vethrak himself waited in the hangar, surrounded by guards. His scales were scarred from recent fighting. "You're alive," Vethrak said. It almost sounded like relief. "Good, we're jumping to Throne World Vermilion immediately. Threxel's main fleet is already heading there. If he reaches the capital before us, he'll destroy the seal chamber rather than let you open it." "How long do we have?" Dacian asked. 4 hours. Maybe 5. The stone throne is fast, but we're not the only ones racing back. Vethrak led them through corridors filled with wounded soldiers. Half the Empire is trying to reach the capital. Some want to protect the seal. Others want to destroy it. By the time we arrive, there will be thousands of ships in orbit. They reached the command center where holographic displays showed the tactical situation. It was worse than Dacian had imagined. Red markers indicated hostile fleets converging on Throne World Vermilion from every direction. Blue markers showed loyalist forces trying to defend the capital. Gray markers represented neutral factions that could go either way. "The Empire is splitting," Lord Vethrak said quietly. 10,000 years of unity, ending because of a question about blood and memory. A new ship appeared on the displays, approaching at dangerous speed. It was small, civilian, moving recklessly through the fleet formations. Before anyone could react, it docked with the stone throne. Guards raised weapons, but the airlock opened to reveal a young man in simple clothes. He looked like Dacian, same features, same eyes. "Just younger. Young Su?" Dacian stared at his brother. "What are you doing here?" "Saving your life, probably." Young Su carried a bag that he set down carefully. "When news broke about the seal and the Imperial bloodline, I went home. To our village on Earth. I talked to the elders, searched through family records, collected everything I could find." He opened the bag. Inside were old books, photographs printed on actual paper, handwritten journals, and data chips containing family histories. "This is everything our family preserved for 8,000 years. Stories, songs, genealogies, traditions. Grandmother's journal is in here, the one she wrote before she died. She wrote about the village, about the mountains, about belonging." HFY picked up one of the journals carefully. "This could be exactly what we need. Cultural documentation proving continuous memory across generations." "There's something else," Young Su said. He pulled out a small wooden box. Inside was a piece of fabric, old and faded but carefully preserved. Korean characters were embroidered on it in thread that had once been red. "This belonged to our ancestor from 15 generations ago. The inscription is a poem about longing for home, about never forgetting where you come from even when you travel far away." Dacian held the fabric carefully. It was so old it felt like it might fall apart, but the characters were still readable. The poem spoke about mountains and rivers, about the pain of distance and the strength of memory. "Our family kept this for 400 years, Young Su said. "They didn't know why it mattered. They just knew it did. Maybe this is what the seal is waiting for. Not just blood, but proof that we never forgot." The stone throne jumped to faster than light travel. The journey to Throne World Vermilion would take hours. Dacian spent the time reading his grandmother's journal, while HFY analyzed the family documents. Bora had been right. The seal wanted memory, not just genetics. "Listen to this," HFY said. "Your grandmother wrote about teaching you Korean songs when you were 5 years old. She says, the boy must know where he comes from. The old words carry something important in them, even if I don't understand what it is. Every generation must teach the next or the thread breaks." "She knew," Dacian whispered. Somehow, without knowing about the Empire or the Imperial bloodline, she knew that memory mattered. That continuity mattered. Jiwoo appeared on a holographic display calling from a research station. "I finished analyzing your family genetics, Dacian. Your bloodline shows almost no genetic drift over the past 8,000 years. Your family married within very small communities, preserving the Imperial markers at concentrations that shouldn't be possible. It's like they were unconsciously protecting something precious. Or the genes themselves were influencing behavior," HFY suggested, "making carriers feel the importance of cultural preservation without knowing why." An alarm sounded. They had arrived at Throne World Vermilion. The command center displays lit up with thousands of ships. The space around the capital was crowded with fleets from every faction. In the center, holding orbit around the planet, was a massive fleet bearing Inquisitor Threxal's colors. His flagship, the Purified Throne, was larger than anything else in the system. "He beat us here," Vethrak growled, "and he's positioned right over the capital. One wrong move and he'll start firing on the surface." A communication came through. Inquisitor Threxal's masked face appeared. "Lord Vethrak, you bring the abomination to its death. How fitting. Surrender the false heir and I will allow your forces to withdraw." "The seal recognized him," Vethrak replied. "By ancient law, that makes him legitimate. You're the one breaking imperial tradition. The seal is corrupted. The Empire is corrupted. Better to end it all than allow humans to defile our history." Threxal's mask seemed to stare directly at Daishin. "You should have died in the archives, human. But I will give you one chance. Publicly renounce any claim to imperial blood. Admit you used technology to trick the seal. Do this and I will let you live in exile." Daishin stepped forward. "I didn't ask for this. I was an archaeologist studying ancient texts. The seal recognized me because I carry blood from the imperial founders. Your founders, my ancestors, helped create the Empire. I have as much right to stand before the seal as anyone." "You have no right." Threxal's voice rose to a scream. "Humans are a lesser species. You appeared in this galaxy only 300 years ago. You cannot possibly be connected to the imperial bloodline." "But we are," Daishin said quietly. 8,000 years ago, exiled members of the royal family fled to Earth. They lived there, had children, and slowly spread through the human population. My family carries their genes. We also carry their culture, their memories, their traditions. We never forgot. That's why the seal recognized me." A new voice cut through the transmission. "All fleets stand down. This is Matriarch Silexus of the Neutral Coalition. We are here to ensure fair resolution." Hundreds of ships appeared, dropping out of faster-than-light travel in perfect formation. They positioned themselves between Threxal's forces and Vethrak's, creating a buffer. "Let him try," Matriarch Silexus commanded. "Let Daishin approach the seal. If he can open it, the matter is settled. If he cannot, we will discuss alternatives. But no more violence until we know the truth." Threxal was silent for a long moment. "Very well. But when he fails, the seal will be destroyed, and humans will be expelled from the Empire." The fleets maintained uneasy positions as shuttles descended to the planet. Daishin, Haiwan, Youngsu, and Lord Vethrak rode down through clouds that looked more ominous than before. Behind them came representatives from every major faction, all of them wanting to witness what happened next. They walked through the palace to the seal chamber. The massive door still waited, its symbols pulsing with that same patient light. The question glowed in Hangul, asking what it had asked for 300 years. "What is the name of home?" Daishin stood before the door, his heart pounding. In one hand he held his grandmother's journal. In the other he held the ancient fabric with its poem about longing and memory. "I understand now," he said quietly. "The seal isn't just asking for information. It's asking for proof that I remember, that I carry the weight of history, that I know what home means." He placed his hand on the door. The symbols blazed bright, scanning his genetics, confirming what everyone now knew. He carried imperial blood, but that wasn't enough. It had never been enough. Daishin spoke in Korean, using the old formal style his grandmother had taught him. He recited the poem from the fabric, about mountains and rivers and never forgetting where you come from. He spoke about his village on Earth, about the traditions maintained across 8,000 years, about the songs and stories passed down through countless generations. He spoke about the weight of memory. The seal chamber filled with light so bright everyone had to look away. The symbols on the door began to move, flowing like water across the surface. Ancient mechanisms that hadn't operated in 300 years groaned to life. The sound echoed through the palace like the voice of history itself. Slowly, impossibly, the massive door began to open. Daishin stepped back, his hand still tingling from where he had touched the seal. Haiwan grabbed his arm to steady him. Youngsu stood frozen, unable to believe what he was seeing. Even Lord Vethrak's scales had gone pale with shock. The door swung inward, revealing a chamber beyond that glowed with soft blue light. As the light spilled out into the seal chamber, something else happened. All across Throne World Vermilion, in the palace and in the city beyond, Ancient systems began activating. Lights that had been dark for centuries flickered to life. Holographic displays emerged from walls. And in orbit, satellites that had been dormant since the last emperor's death suddenly came online. "What's happening?" Hyawan whispered. "The seal was connected to everything," Jiwoo said from her position monitoring the systems. Opening it triggered a cascading activation. "The entire Imperial infrastructure is waking up." Daishin stepped through the doorway into the chamber beyond. The room was circular, its walls covered in more of the ancient script. In the center stood a pedestal holding a crystal that pulsed with light in rhythm with a heartbeat. Around the pedestal were 12 pillars, each one carved with symbols representing the founding species of the Empire. One pillar showed symbols that looked like Hangul mixed with other Earth scripts. "They were here," Daishin said quietly. "Humans were part of the Empire from the very beginning. Not invaders, not infiltrators, founders." Lord Vethrak entered the chamber, moving carefully as if afraid he might break something sacred. The founders left a message. "Look." Holographic figures appeared above the crystal. 12 beings, each from a different species. One of them was human, wearing traditional Korean clothing that was 10,000 years old but still recognizable. The human figure spoke in a language that was almost Korean but not quite, old enough that it had changed over the millennia. Hyewan's translation device worked this time. "We are the founders of the Thousand Suns Empire. We created this seal as a test for our descendants. The Empire was not meant to last forever in its current form. It was meant to change, to grow, to remember where it came from. This seal will only open when someone appears who carries both our blood and our memory, someone who proves that cultural continuity survives even across the vastness of space and time." The human founder continued. "To our descendants who open this seal, know that you face a greater challenge than uniting the Empire. We fled here from something terrible, the devouring swarm, an extragalactic force that consumes all life in its path. We built this empire as a defense, a unified civilization strong enough to resist what destroyed our original homes. The seal's opening means the swarm is returning. You will need everything we left behind and more to survive what comes next." The holographic figures faded. In their place appeared star charts showing positions of defense stations, weapons platforms, and ancient shipyards scattered throughout the galaxy. There were thousands of them, all waiting to be activated. "The founders prepared for this," Vethrak said, his voice filled with awe. "They built defenses that have been sleeping for 10,000 years, waiting for the right air to wake them." Daishin felt like the weight of the galaxy had just settled on his shoulders. "I'm not ready for this. I'm just an archaeologist. I study the past. I don't lead empires." "The seal chose you," said a new voice. An elderly human entered the chamber, moving slowly but with dignity. He was ancient, his face lined with more years than seemed possible. Ambassador Kyungmi and several other human elders followed him. "Elder Counselor Jae-sung," Kyungmi said. "He's the oldest living human. His family records go back further than anyone's. When the seal opened, he asked to come here." Jae-sung approached Daishin and looked at him with eyes that had seen too much history. "You don't want power. Good. The seal didn't open for someone who wanted to be emperor. It opened for someone who understood the weight of memory and responsibility. My family kept records for 300 generations. We passed down stories about the importance of remembering. We never knew why until now." He turned to address everyone in the chamber. The founders didn't want conquerors. They wanted guardians, people who understood that leadership means protecting what matters, preserving what should be preserved, and sacrificing for those who come after. The floor shook. Jiwoo's voice came through on the emergency channel. "You need to see this. The defense platforms are fully active now, and they're detecting something. Long-range sensors are picking up anomalous readings at the galaxy's rim. Something massive is approaching." Holographic displays filled the chamber, showing data from sensors that hadn't been used in millennia. At the edge of the galaxy, something vast and dark was moving. The swarm, it was real and it was coming. "How long do we have?" Vethrak asked. "Years," and Jiwoo replied. "Maybe a decade if we're lucky. But the sensors are clear. It's heading straight for us." Silence filled the chamber. Then Inquisitor Threxall's voice came through, no longer masked by arrogance. "Is this true? The threat the founders fled from is returning?" "Yes," Daishin said. "The seal was programmed to open when it was needed most. Not just because someone had the right blood, but because the Empire needed to be ready for what's coming." More voices joined the channel. Fleet commanders, planetary governors, faction leaders, All of them had access to the sensor data now. All of them could see the threat approaching. Matriarch Silexus spoke first. If this is real, then we have no choice. The Empire must unite or we all die. The question is who leads us? All eyes turned to Daishin. He looked at the crystal on the pedestal, at the symbols on the pillars, at his brother holding their grandmother's journal. I'm not emperor, Daishin said. The Empire doesn't need emperors anymore. It needs something different. He turned to face Lord Vethrak and the gathered representatives. The founders created the Empire to unite different species against a common threat. But over 10,000 years, the Empire forgot its purpose. It became about power and control instead of cooperation and survival. The seal opened for me because I carry memory of what the founders intended. Not domination, but guardianship. What do you propose? Vethrak asked. A council of remembrance. Representatives from every species, especially those who maintained their cultural traditions. We govern together with no single ruler. I'll be the first guardian, keeper of the seal and coordinator of the defense. But I won't be emperor. The time of emperors is over. Some will refuse this arrangement, Matriarch Silexus warned. Some still want traditional imperial rule. Then they can refuse, Daishin said. But the swarm is coming whether we're united or not. The founders left us tools and weapons and knowledge, but they can't help us unless we work together. Every species, every culture, every tradition, we need all of it. Slowly, one by one, the faction leaders began to agree. Even Inquisitor Threxall, faced with an existential threat, bowed his head in acceptance. Then let it be done, Vethrak said. The Council of Remembrance will govern. Daishin will be first guardian, and the Empire will prepare for war. Over the following weeks, the transformation began. The ancient defense platforms came fully online, their weapon systems more powerful than anything the current Empire could build. Shipyards that had been silent for millennia started producing vessels based on founder technology, and most importantly, representatives from every species began gathering on Throne World Vermilion for the first Council of Remembrance. Hyewan was appointed chief historian, responsible for recovering and preserving cultural memories from all species. Jiwoo led the genetic heritage program, ensuring no bloodline's history would be lost. Youngsu returned to Earth to document human traditions before the war began, but not before teaching the Council about the importance of family and memory. Ambassador Kyungmi worked tirelessly to help human colonies, which had gone from being suspected conspirators to honored founding members of the Empire. The change wasn't easy, and prejudice didn't disappear overnight, but the shared threat forced cooperation. Admiral Insu positioned the human fleet as part of the integrated defense network. Captain Sung Ho and the merchant fleet volunteered to transport supplies and refugees as needed. Even Bora from New Seoul joined the council, bringing her expertise in cultural preservation. Daishin stood on the imperial balcony months after opening the seal, watching as 1,000 ships took position in the sky above Throne World Vermilion. Each ship represented a different species, a different culture, a different set of traditions and memories. Together they would face the swarm. Hyewan joined him, looking up at the assembled fleet. Do you think we can win? I think we have to try, Daishin replied. The founders gave us the tools. The seal gave us the knowledge. But what matters most is that we remember why we're fighting, not for territory or power, but for survival, for the right to exist and remember and pass our stories to the next generation. Your grandmother would be proud, Hyewan said. Daishin thought about the old woman who had taught him Korean songs in a space station far from Earth. She had never known about the Empire or the seal, or the threat from beyond the galaxy. She had just known that memory mattered. That tradition mattered. That remembering where you came from was important even if you couldn't explain why. The seal had answered only to blood, but it had opened for memory. 8,000 years ago, exiled royals had fled to Earth and hidden among humans, preserving their genes but losing their history. For 8 millennia, their descendants had maintained traditions without knowing why, speaking an ancient language, keeping old customs, teaching their children songs about longing for home. Now Daishin understood. Home wasn't just a place. It was memory. It was continuity. It was the weight of history carried forward by people who refused to forget. The Empire had been locked away until someone could remember what it meant to be home. Now humanity, and all the species of the Thousand Suns stood together, not as an empire of conquest, but as a coalition of guardians. Different cultures, different traditions, different memories, all united by the shared purpose of survival and the determination to protect what mattered. The stars stretched out before them, beautiful and dangerous. Somewhere beyond the galaxy's rim, the swarm approached. It would take years to arrive, but when it did, they would be ready. The seal was open. The defenses were active. The council was united. And Dai Xin, the archaeologist who had only wanted to study the past, stood as first guardian of the Thousand Suns, carrying the memories of 8,000 years and the hopes of countless species. His grandmother had been right. The old words carried something important. Every generation had to teach the next, or the thread would break. The thread had held, through 8 millennia of separation, through the vastness of space, through the weight of time itself, the thread had held. Now it was time to see if memory and blood together were strong enough to face what came from the darkness beyond the stars. The seal had asked for the name of home. Dai Xin had answered with memory, and the galaxy would survive because someone had remembered.